These episodes will make you hate Mordecai.
I think it's pretty clear
I
that
already hate
regular show has
Mordecai.
one of the best casts out of any animated show in history. I
Hmm.
remember when I first started watching this show, I thought the characters not only had unique designs, but also had interesting personalities
Y'all
that
remember
made
this
them all
episode?
stand out. And as I got older, I
Damn,
started to
right?
feel
So
like I really
good.
resonated with many of the characters more than when I was watching as a kid. But even though I love many of these characters in this show, there's always been one character that I've always had a weird relationship with, and that was Mordecai. Because if I'm being honest, when I first started watching this show, Mordecai was one of my favorite characters, especially in the earlier seasons.
Yeah, I fuck with Mordecai. Cause he was like always had like he always tried to prevent shit. He always had like sense. Like when it comes to cartoons, like Ruby didn't really have sense. He was just doing stupid shit.
But I remember as the show would start to get into the later seasons, even though I couldn't exactly put my finger on what it was, I would begin to really
Wait, why am
dislike
I all the way up
Mordecai as a
here?
character. And it was only after I revisited
Bro,
regular show
I
again
did
now
a
that I'm
whole
in my
video
20s
with
that
this
I
up
was
here.
able to
Oh,
realize
hell
something
no.
that was so obvious. Mordecai kind of
Why
sucks.
do y'all say that shit
And
after
after
I
I
do a
realized
video?
this, you wouldn't believe
Like,
my
so
surprise
late.
when I found out
What
that
the
I'm not the
fuck?
only one who feels this way, as a large portion of the
Yo!
show fan base really hate
Bro.
Mordecai. And while he still has his fans, it seems like many of them, as well as casual watchers, don't understand the Mordo hate train. So in this video, I'm gonna go over a couple episodes that really made me and will probably make you hate Mordecai. Now, something that gets looked over a lot when people talk about Mordecai's character is just how scummy of a friend he really was. And look, don't get me wrong, Mordecai does have moments where he's actually a good friend. For example, when he won the Excellent Challenge so that he could win the trucker hat for Rigby to get him out of his coma. But while Mordecai does do some big things like this that make him seem like a good
remember
friend,
that cuss
a lot
at
of
the-
people
Yo,
ignore
I
his
remember that
day-by-day
shit.
trash behavior. Let's take a look at how he treats Rigby, for example. And no, I'm not going to use the infamous "I'll kill you" scene from the episode It's Time as a knock against him. Because what a lot of people forget about that scene is while Mordecai did push Rigby off the microwave, Rigby pushed Mordecai first, and Rigby was the reason they were even on the microwave, as Rigby jumped on Mordecai's back as the microwave was warping. On top of that, Mordecai screaming out "I'll kill you" wasn't supposed to be taken serious, as Rigby had told that to Mordecai multiple times throughout season 1. And clearly the instant regret Mordecai had on his face when he saw Rigby fade into nothing showed that he wasn't intentionally trying to hurt Rigby. Or at least he wasn't in that moment, because if we go to the season 1 episode Death Punchies, it tells a completely different story. The episode starts off with Rigby and Mordecai getting a new video game, and obviously after getting the new game, they want to start it up and start playing. And right as the two go to pick their characters, they begin to argue over who's going to be player 1. Both of them want to be player 1 because player 1 has a shovel, while player 2 has a quote-unquote sucky pickaxe. So to settle who gets to be player 1, Mordecai suggests that they
Yo.
both play punchies, a game where whoever punches the other one the hardest wins. Rigby goes first
Rigby
by
always
throwing his
lost.
punch, which doesn't even phase Mordecai. Mordecai then takes his turn by punching Rigby all the way across the sofa with the biggest smile on his face. Rigby then complains about how it's unfair that every time they have to decide something, Mordecai makes them play punchies because he knows there's no
Like,
way
I
that he
remember
can
the
beat
video
Mordecai.
games.
The episode then follows
Like their video games always like it's like the Krabby Patty. Like the Krabby Patty always looked good in like the episodes. Their video games always look so much better than mine.
Rigby as he tries to find
Always
a way
want
to
to
beat Mordecai
play
in
their
punches.
fucking-
He then
what's
learns
it
a
called?
Death Kwon Do technique called the Death Punch and prepares to rematch Mordecai. But Mordecai learns about Rigby's plan and goes to the same
Hell
Death
yeah, you
Kwon Do
gotta go back to
dojo to
VOD.
learn a technique to keep Rigby from beating him at punchies. The two then have a Death Kwon Do showdown as Rigby uses the Death Punch and Mordecai uses the Death Block. And as you could guess, Mordecai's Death Block cancels out Rigby's Death Punch, leaving them both at a stalemate. But Rigby doesn't give up, continuing to spam the Death Punch over and over.
I was just saying like whenever it came out, from when it came out to probably like 2012, 2013. Like 2013 was probably the year like I stopped watching television. Like not by
To the
choice.
point where him and Mordecai are in an underground crater with lava flowing in. And while
Yeah,
Mordecai
yeah.
is telling Rigby to stop, Rigby
2012,
refuses
2013.
until he beats Mordecai at punchies. It's then that we get a montage of Mordecai beating up Rigby throughout the years through several games of punchies. And when Mordecai realizes that Rigby won't stop until he wins a game of punchies, Mordecai lets him win and they both escape. Okay, now, so let's take a look at how Mordecai treats his friend in this episode. So we know from this episode that Mordecai openly acknowledges that Rigby is the weakest person in the
You never really watch cartoons. I used to be at a point where all I did was watch cartoons.
part. Because when
Was
Rigby
good.
says that he can never beat Mordecai at punchies, Mordecai says this.
Dude,
Like,
you
I
don't
hated
beat
real
anybody
movies.
at punchies.
Now from this clip, it's obvious that Mordecai not only knows that his friend is physically weaker than him, but also takes advantage of the fact that he can physically bully Rigby
it's all
around.
enough.
Mordecai purposely picks a game that he knows that
So every day you just didn't go inside. Whenever you went to sleep, you just turned the TV off. You didn't have a TV in your bedroom, which is fine. I'm asking, but bro, like you can't escape cartoons. Like cartoons are supposed to be part of your life. I was outside like in fucking from like 2009 to fucking 2012, and even then, bro, I was watching fucking TV. If that's fucking going to the living room, fucking having my own TV, going to my friend's house and watch TV, like it was just around. Only in one room? Damn. I thought I was struggling. Damn. You can't
Rigby
even get
can
a TV
never
in
beat
your.
him in, so
You only sharing one TV in throughout the whole house.
he can consistently have his way. But not only does he beat Rigby at punchies, he takes joy in the fact that he can physically beat up Rigby. I mean, look at this clip. Does this look like someone who's just playing a game with their friend? And we see in this episode that Mordecai consistently beats up Rigby.
I'll take a switch from Nickelodeon to Disney to bro. I used to watch PBS Kids until 5:30 when the cartoons went off, and then I would flip the Cartoon Network when I got home just to see if something was different, but it was mostly Johnny Test. Johnny Test would drop at like from like 3 to 6, right? So I would go all the way to 5:30, watch the episode of Johnny Test, and that's when like 6 o'clock, a regular show, Adventure Time, or whatever popped off, I would watch it there all the way until like 9. 9 is when Cartoon Network went to Adult Swim. And I would flip from Cartoon Network to Nickelodeon just depending on what it was, but most of the time, I didn't like the in real life shows over the cartoons. I always preferred the cartoons. So I'd go to Nickelodeon. Oh, it's the iCarly episode I already watched. It's a Drake and Josh episode I already watched. Let me go to Cartoon Network and watch the Adventure Time or regular show. And now I really wouldn't even check Disney Channel or like Disney XD or Noggin or anything like that. And then after 9 o'clock when Adult Swim came on, I'll look you flip through the channel because like I used to like fuck with MTV, MTV2 and shit. But most of the time I would end up on Nicktoons, which another cartoon, and it would be like all the old like it would be all like the what's that shit called? Canceled like Nick shows. Phineas and Ferb hit and Phineas and Ferb was never on. The only time it was on was like during the weekends for real. It was never on like at 5:30 after you got home from school.
Be to the point.
It never was on. It was always like Hannah Montana, fucking what's it called? Hannah Montana, Zack and Cody and
where
shit.
Rigby would rather die being burnt by lava than let Mordecai win another game of punchies. And the craziest part is, this isn't even the worst time Mordecai was a complete jerk to Rigby. In the season 6 episode Live With Your Back, we see that Mordecai and Rigby are working when
I would rather watch another episode of the same episode of fucking cartoons over like the in real life.
CJ pulls up to pick up Mordecai early. Mordecai then asks Rigby if he can cover for him so that he can go with his girlfriend, and Rigby, trying to be a good friend, says yes. We then cut to another day where Mordecai and Rigby are working, and Mordecai asks Rigby out the blue if he can cover for him so that he can take CJ to a movie. Rigby, being a little bit more reluctant this time, still agrees and says yes. We then cut to yet another day of Mordecai asking Rigby if he can cover for him again so that he can go do something with CJ. And Rigby, even though he doesn't want to, still trying to be a good friend, says yes. We then cut to a park meeting where Benson's handing out everybody assignments. And Benson tells Mordecai that he needs him to help Rigby change light bulbs, to which Rigby says that he can do it on his own. Rigby is then laughed at by everybody and is told without Mordecai he would be completely useless. And Rigby, looking for his best friend to back him up and say that he's useful, has to sit in front of everybody and hear this.
You're basically the opposite of useful pretty much anytime we do anything.
But that's not even the craziest part about this moment. The craziest part is when Rigby brings up how he's been covering for Mordecai for almost a week now. Mordecai says this.
Well, I mean, it's the least you could do.
Like, there's genuinely no way I could be friends with someone after they told me this. Rigby ends up quitting his job at the park, and he ends up getting a job at a moving company where you have to lift everything with your back. And even though Rigby does hate the job, he's sticking through with this so that he can get his first paycheck to rub in Mordecai's face to show that he actually is useful. At the end of the episode, Rigby has to move an entire truck by himself to get his first paycheck. And Eileen, who's been supporting Rigby throughout this entire time, brings Mordecai because she wants them to make up. Rigby then begins to argue with Mordecai, saying that Mordecai only uses him and treats him like trash.
Rigby, help me get a girlfriend. Let me borrow your time machine, Rigby. Rigby, I found a dumb sweater and I gotta return it. All you do is use me, man.
But I never asked you to do those things.
And the craziest part about Mordecai saying this is, if you've watched all the regular show, you know that he's lying. Mordecai consistently asks favors from Rigby, and Rigby, oftentimes trying to be a good friend, tries to help Mordecai out. But Mordecai is so self-centered that even when someone is consistently doing favors for them, he will look them in their eyes and tell them that's the least that they can do. And I think what I hate most about this episode is that although Eileen had good intentions, she says this.
Eileen, why'd you bring that guy here?
Because you guys are friends and you always support each other.
But the problem with this statement is, it's not true. Mordecai almost never supports Rigby when it's actually something important. Let's jump all the way to the season 7 finale, Rigby's graduation day special. One of the many plot points of season 7 was Rigby going back to school so that he could finally graduate. And this episode follows Rigby as he prepares to give a graduation day speech and the rest of the park members preparing for Rigby's graduation day party. And throughout this episode, you see that everybody's all excited for Rigby, everybody's doing their best to make sure that Rigby has the best graduation party. Everybody's so happy except for Mordecai. Mordecai throughout this episode is consistently blowing off Rigby. He's consistently acting like he doesn't want to help with Rigby's graduation party. And when Rigby reaches out to Mordecai multiple times asking him for help with his graduation day speech, Mordecai tells Rigby that he needs to learn how to do stuff on his own and blows him off. Even though Rigby had been doing stuff on his own for almost the entire season. And it's only after Rigby completely fails at giving his speech the first time around, almost embarrassing himself in front of everybody that he knows, that Mordecai actually comes up to Rigby and tells him why he's been acting the way he's been acting. And this was Mordecai's whole justification of why he's been blowing off his best friend on one of the most important days of his life.
It's hard to see you doing so great. I guess I
What
always
the
kind of liked
fuck?
that I was doing better than you before.
Mordecai
a
liked
hater?
the fact that he was better than Rigby,
Oh,
and when
hell
Rigby
no.
looked like he was going to be
What's
on the
it
same
saying?
level as
They want you to do good unless you're doing better than them.
Mordecai couldn't handle
Oh,
it.
shit.
Now tell me, does that actually sound like a real friend, someone that you would want to have around
Hell
you,
no.
or does that just sound like a hater disguised as a friend? Rigby's
Oh, God.
graduation day should have had nothing to do with Mordecai. It should have been a celebration of Rigby's hard work and accomplishments. But all Mordecai could think about is how it makes him look worse by comparison. But I promise you, this isn't even the best example of how Mordecai will take something that has nothing to do with him and try to make it completely revolve around him. In the season 6 finale dumped at the altar, the episode starts off with Mordecai confused about what to do after he finds out that Margaret has feelings for him even though he's with CJ. Mind you, while Mordecai's focusing on a love triangle, everybody's preparing for Muscle Man's wedding. We then fast forward to the actual day of the wedding, and Mordecai's still caught up on his love triangle even though he's supposed to be helping set up for the wedding. Fast forward again in the episode, and Muscle Man is freaking out because he says he won't get married until he reads the letter that Muscle Dad wrote for him. Mordecai and Rigby are then assigned to go to Muscle Man's trailer and find the actual letter. And while looking for the letter, Mordecai talks to Rigby about his relationship issues, and Rigby tells Mordecai that he just needs to trust his gut. The two end up finding the letter and rush back to the ceremony to give it to Muscle Man to read. But Muscle Man is so emotional, he says that Mordecai has to be the one to read it to him out loud. And Mordecai does read the letter, which then gives Muscle Man the strength to start the wedding back up again. But before they can continue the ceremony, Mordecai hijacks the wedding by grabbing a microphone and going on a rant about finding his true love and
What
not
the
knowing
fuck?
if his soulmate is even in the audience.
Oh,
Mind you, his
hell
girlfriend
nah.
is literally in the audience listening and watching
Yo.
all of this happen. And as you could guess, CJ gets up and storms out crying. And
Bro.
Muscle Man calls out Mordecai for hijacking his wedding while everybody's looking at Mordecai like the jerk he is. Because this man
Nah,
didn't
that's
know which girl he
crazy.
wanted to be with, even though he already had a girlfriend.
I ain't gonna lie, I stopped watching regular show when like Rigby started doing good. I think I never watched like Rigby like going to college
And
and
his
shit.
best friend Rigby told him
So
to
this is all
trust
new.
his gut.
This is
He
crazy.
thought the best thing to do was to hijack one of his closest friends' weddings after reading the emotional message that his dead dad wrote for him for his wedding
His
day.
dad?
I don't know about y'all, but I don't think it gets any
Yo.
more self-centered than that. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I can't
He
even
is
understand how I
crazy
used
for
to
that.
like Mordecai as a character. And what I think the worst part about Mordecai's character is, he never really gets
to
any
come up?
real repercussions for the stuff that he does. Like, even after he
Nah, I think I left is when the park went up to space.
Jack Muscle Man's wedding,
That was a big
nobody
thing that
really
happened.
told him
I didn't
anything.
get to see.
And it's like Mordecai acts like a jerk time after time again, and he just says, "I'm sorry for it," and the audience is supposed
Bro,
to just
stop
take that.
doing
Look,
this.
all I can say is we're Team Rigby over here. But if you made it to the end of the video, please hit the like button as it pushes the content out to more people. And make sure to subscribe and hit the noti bell to be notified when I upload my next video. And until then, it's been your boy
Thanks, man.
Cornex V.
Those last two episodes was crazy. The fucking Rigby going to college and graduating and shit, that is insane. And the wedding shit is crazy. Yeah, the video overall was mid.